Welcome to the Feel Better, Be Better show. Today, Kate and Nevada will answer your questions and introduce new topics designed to help feel better and be better. These are raw conversations, but they will make a difference.
All right, so let's see here. Today we're going to talk about solving the NCAA rules of play, right?
I thought you were totally going to say world hunger.
No. Whatever. I'm too hungry right now. Can't solve my own hunger. How am I going to solve world hunger? No, we're going into team hopping all the way, youth to college.
Yep.
Oh, pros. We kind of hit pros too.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think we cover it all.
Covered all.
All right. So, super educational this time. All right, okay. So, it's been a little while, but we were leading through on, players changing teams and how it affects not only the team, but the players, the coaches, the parents, and the thought process and everything behind all that. But I kind of want to hit on college now. I think for me, I'm kind of showing this progression, this buildup as we're seeing here. And we've had plenty of people complain or not complain, however you want to look at it, on the college transfer portal. So I think we hit the college side now. I think we were kind of talking the other day about that LSU player, girls basketball, what's her name?
Yeah, Haley Van Leith. I saw that meme and I was showing you just that she's transferring again for the second time now. So 3 teams in 3 years. And the person who put it on there was complaining, oh, she's a great, I like her as a ball player, but I just can't get behind her because she just jumps ships whenever and basically essentially moves on to the next team. And it's crazy because my thought is so many people complain about the transfer portal and girls and boys jumping from one team to the next from year to year. And we're seeing it at the youngest youth levels already being a problem. It's not just this independent thing that's happening at a higher level, which we'll get more into the higher level and how that's affected. But it's not an isolated thing that they get up at that level and they're moving around. They've learned it from somewhere before they get there.
I was going to say, we're either teaching it to them as they go up, which, I'm sorry, as far as I've understood, AAU level, youth level, and stuff like that has been like that for a little while. So I think it's almost going up, or if we're learning it coming down. I don't know which way it's going.
I would argue probably going up.
I think it's going up. But no, unfortunately, what she's doing at LSU that's the game now. That is completely what every college player is doing. And that's why certain coaches are getting out. Nick Saban, I don't know how much you know about that story. But there he is. He really wasn't supposed to be in the national championship game this year. Got his team together. They made a run. Of course, they had a great team, but they weren't necessarily the favorite going in. They make that run. They get a chance. They're playing well. They're, whatever, they take second. And he's going to play at exit interviews, for the next year, what we're going to work on, how we're going to come back better and all that stuff. And he said, basically everybody sat in and what are you going to do for me and how much are you going to give me paid? And he was sitting back going that's not what I do. I coach you to be ready for the pro level. He's like, this is not, it used to be guys would ask me what they need to do to get better. Now it was what I'm going to do for them. And he was just like, that's not what I came to coaching for. And that's why he quit. Of course, he was plenty past retirement age, but
yeah.
He ultimately said that's the reason why he quit. Now there's plenty of people who said he didn't want to work on the transfer portal. They're recruiting kids that much, but 6 to 1, half dozen the other on that one. It's still the same thing.
Yeah. With that too, I find that interesting just because we'll get into it later, probably in a different episode, but we've had to have some conversations with our team about what are you looking for in this program? Because, in my mind, a good coach, which we try to live by this philosophy. We know other coaches, and even Nick Saban and some of those out there are really great. It's about growing the player, not even just on the field, but off the field too, and getting them ready for after you. And that conversation completely shifts and people aren't interested in that. How does your philosophy and program help them?
Yeah.
It doesn't. So I don't blame them for not wanting to stay and coach. It is a very hard thing. And it's hard to plan and strategize for your team and who you have and who you're going to have, 6 months from then.
Well, I mean, I was kind of funny we're talking about this, but I was coaching a young kid tonight, and he's been getting a lot better. And I mean, it's great. I mean, he's doing really good. But tonight he was kind of struggling a little bit, and it is because he was too close to the plate. And so hey, you set up right? You know, because I taught him how to get set up. And he set up. I'm like, no, that arm's supposed to be straight like that right there. He's like, oh yeah, that's right. So he backed up like 2 inches and started hitting. And his mom happened to be sitting real close, and she was like, she almost looked at me like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, ultimately the individual stuff, it's a lot of setup. The team stuff is a whole different conversation. But I mean, even I just told her, I was like, I spend my 14 new practice walking around making sure we get the right grip and we're set up at the right plate. I mean, there's not a lot to individual stuff. And we had a little meeting the other day, and I think I had a line that was probably pretty short that I think was pretty powerful, and that is, it's ultimately the player's desire. I can't coach you to want to play. I can't coach you to want to change. I can't coach you to want to get better.
Mm-hmm.
I can hopefully create a conversation where I get a connection with you that you'll feel like that. But ultimately, if you just don't want to, I can't help. There's not a whole lot I'm going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part where like Nick Saban and the transfer portal comes in, where you're just like, if you don't want to play, I can't really help you. If you just want to get paid, I mean, then that's what the transfer portal is for. That's what the transfer portal is for. Now, if you want, I understand when you get to that level and there is that much money floating around, it's hard to argue going into there. I mean, yeah, you may be making $500,000 here, but you could hit the transfer portal and go make $1.5 million. You turned away $1 million? Because I'd have a hard time turning away $1 million.
Well, and you're looking at young kids who aren't fully developed cognitively, and they're having to make these decisions, and some of them are coming from places, most of them are coming from places where they don't have that kind of money in their family. So how do you not have that be a problem? You're thrown into a whole different world.
Even if you have money in your family, who's turning away $1 million to play play at a different field, at a different team?
True. It's just a hard concept, and then you're having young kids make these decisions. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't get paid for the things that they're doing or not. That's a whole different conversation. But the fact is, that is a thing that's available. Now we have these young kids who are having to make these decisions, and then they have to prioritize, do I go make this money now, or do I go here and grow, or is there a combination to be able to do both, or like what am I looking for, and like what those priorities are. And you know, when we're younger, we're not always the best at making the ones that are the best for us long term.
Well, I mean this has been going on. I mean, basketball is one of the best ones for this. I mean, it's always been, because it's so few players. I mean, and it's such big money. It's a big money sport. There's only 5 guys that play on the court at one time. I mean, we literally have awards for the 6th man. We don't have an award for the 7th man. So, I mean, it's not that deep. So it usually really stands out quite a bit. But, I mean, as soon as they did the one-and-done rule with the NBA, which, I mean, college kind of pretty much asked for and begged for. Now, the NBA wasn't against it, because that allowed them to have one more year of being able to evaluate a player before they had to give them millions of dollars to pay. But as soon as that happened, I mean, you had certain guys going overseas. Because why not? They can make more money.
Mm-hmm. But no, you have a very good point. I mean, you have people now not required to stay for a certain period of time, and then making that jump for money versus necessarily building team skills and camaraderie, which kills me, because you look at some of these teams that end up doing really well and making runs and stuff like that. A lot of times it's the teams that have the best chemistry and cohesion versus the superstar teams. The superstar teams tend to have a hard time. And so when you're
sometimes,
not all the time, but a lot of times, that's why you have some of those teams that come in and beat other teams like that, because they have such good ability to play together.
Well, there's some very, very, very good teams, especially in this last NCAA tournament we just had, that had great quality players, but they weren't quite as well seasoned. It's one of the reasons why, supposedly the reason why, is John Calipari's not coaching Kentucky Wildcats anymore, because he was doing the high school kids to develop them to get to the pros, the one-and-dones. And the guys the teams that were doing really well in the tournament were ones that were working on transfer portals. So they were getting the kids that knew what they were doing, just hadn't quite made the splash yet. They were getting them on their team, and they were able to run circles around those guys. So, I mean, that was a changing of the game there. So, I mean, you are seeing that happen. You got certain programs, Creighton, I can think of one in particular that seems to have players that stick around for a long time. They tend to have a lot of 4-year players and stuff like that. They tend to do pretty well, but it's funny, they get in these tournaments, they just can't beat the athleticism of some of the other guys. Because, I mean, it's really hard in basketball. Athleticism is a huge thing. I mean, it is in football too.
It is, but I mean, looking at the two types of schools, I would probably rather prefer as a coach to coach at a school like Creighton, where you're getting to know and develop that relationship for 4 years with most of your players, versus a school like KU or Kentucky, where from year to year your team could be completely different.
Well, Kentucky went to like 4 other coaches. I mean, in Kentucky, I mean, what do you got? You got UNC, KU. I mean, UCLA
Duke,
used to be there, Duke a little bit, and then Kentucky and UConn right now. The men's team right now. I mean, that coach. I mean, it's hard to argue with 2 years in a row, a double-digit wins all throughout the championship.
Yeah,
2
but
years in a row.
Does he fit the mold though? Is his player staying, or are they leaving after a year?
He's doing the transfer portal. He's working the transfer portal.
Okay, so he's not like, I get these freshmen one and done and then gone and moved on.
Nope, but he's not taking guys, keeping them for 4 years. He's basically every year's a new year.
Interesting.
But anyway, what I'm trying to get at though is that Kentucky then went to like 4 or 5 different coaches. They all turned him down because I mean, it's interesting how the transfer portal has made it to be where it's like everybody can kind of compete if you can get the right, the right influence, the right players, and put the right team together. You're good to go. Oh no, so I mean, yeah, it's one thing to talk about the kids playing overseas and everything, but it was interesting this year because I think Caitlin Clark had an additional year. She could have played again.
Yeah, she had one more she could have played.
Exactly. Well, here's the funny part about it. She would have made more in college than she will in the pros.
I'm aware.
Now, that does not mean – here's the really interesting part because people are like, well, she'll have all the extra endorsement deals in the pros. I'm like, she can get them now. That's what the deal – so, I mean, there's really – it's interesting.
She already has some of them now.
Yeah, women's is very interesting because they can make more money in college than they can in the pros, which is weird. Yep. But here's the other kicker. If you're a guy and you're in college and you're making really good money, you can almost stay in college too and make better money than you can in the pros.
Well, that's the weird thing you say is not only like basketball is an example, but we have a women's pro league. You go to like gymnastics where we watch it just every 4 years, most people, unless you're an avid gymnasts fan. You watch every 4 years. How do you know?
How did you know I do that?
Oh my gosh. At the Olympics, So you have the girl from LSU, I don't know what her name is, but I can picture her, blonde girl. She's making bank from her image being at LSU. Like everybody knows her and Angel Reese, and she goes afterward, whatever you do afterward for getting ready for Olympics and any international competition. I bet she doesn't make even close to that. And like people probably don't go watch that to the same level. It's just crazy.
No, the interesting part about it, especially that LSU player, is I could actually see where it might benefit you to be able to spread it around. Like maybe you make a contact in LSU and you're still selling stuff for them, and you're still getting residuals or something like that from that deal. But now you're in another place getting a different deal. So I mean, you could be getting additional stuff on there. Maybe you keep them. Maybe it's they had a good contact with Nike. Well, now you're at a school that's a good contact with Adidas or something. I understand. I don't know how all those work, but I can see where maybe we're skipping around and going to different teams actually makes you more money.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's funny because I mean, there's plenty of people that play for fun, that always did sports and never were good enough to get paid to play. It's a whole different world when you are good enough to get paid to play. I mean, that becomes your job. You're maximizing what you're doing. That would be like going to your place of work and going, whoa, I know you're going to pay me $50,000 a year, but I will take $30,000 instead. And nobody does that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things where the system that we have is leading us to that, and that's what everybody is seeing and what everybody is keying off of. But I think you're seeing it all the way down.
Yeah. And I do want to clarify too, I think there are benefits to the transfer portal as well. Like watching college softball, that's my sport of choice that I watch a lot of. Yeah, you have the problems with money and different stuff like that and people team hopping, but you also have girls who committed so young at 15, 16 years old to go to some school, and the coaching staff, the teams might be completely different by the time they get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going into a situation that was not what you originally necessarily went into because you loved the atmosphere for it. And maybe you don't vibe with that team the first year and you find a team that you really can fit in with and you transfer and you stay there for your next like 2 to 3 years or whatever it is. There are situations like that I'm like, that is awesome. I've played with girls, at the collegiate level that were in that boat, and it was not a possibility because you had to sit out a year. You lost a whole year of eligibility if you did that.
You lost the year.
Yeah, it was just completely gone.
Yeah.
And so the fact that there's the ability, now do I think things maybe need to be a little different so you don't leave the team hanging? Potentially. But the fact that there are some benefits in that regard to it, like I think there is some good to it as well. And just like when we talk about girls looking for different teams at the youth level, there are times when it's appropriate as well. There's just a lot of times where it's done very poorly.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about committing that early, but I mean, I've heard plenty of stories where they committed and the coach took another job. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're doing a personal commitment where you're going to go play for this person, and then they up and leave. And the way the old system was, guess what? You're there. And I mean, how awesome is that? I mean, and then I'm going to go into football and that kind of stuff. But I mean, I think it was Jalen Hurts in particular, where he went to Alabama and there was, I can't remember which stud quarterback was ahead of him. So he was redshirted and took his time. Well, they brought in somebody that they liked better. And so, I mean, if he wasn't able to transfer out and go play for another team, he may not be in the NFL. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some definite reasons of why you should be able to let some player movement happen. But with the current NIL deals, I mean, it very much feels like, well, it's just all about the money. And that was, I hate to say it, that was the one thing the college game had, and it's losing it, is that it wasn't about the money. It was for NCAA, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. You didn't have it at the player level.
The player levels weren't getting it. And I don't know, I mean, it could be interesting, could not be, but I mean, we've kind of talked about it a little bit going into how we got to where we're at. Mm-hmm. And I think college is one of the ones that's, to me, is the one that's getting all the headlines right now. But we've had this conversation. I didn't realize it until you brought it up, but I can understand now. When you're playing college sports, there's quite a bit of money because of Title IX, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a female athlete or you're a male athlete. So, I mean, it really makes a big difference.
Well, it just balances out the opportunities for scholarships and amount of positions for teams, for positions on different sports teams.
It does, but what I'm getting at, though, is that in high school and below, it's, stay with basketball. Basketball, and then it's women's basketball. It's not men's basketball, it's basketball.
They actually label it men's and women's now, but yeah.
I understand, but I mean, that's when I was growing up, that's the way it was. If you wanted to play with the boys, you could play with the boys. If you're a girl and you want to play with the girls, you play with the girls. I mean, but the boys couldn't go play with the girls. That was just the way it was.
But now they won't let the girls play with the boys if there is a girls team.
But when you get into college where they have to have this money split, then that's when you have to kind of designate. And as far as I'm concerned, we'll stick in basketball. I'm not aware that the NBA doesn't allow women to play. I'm pretty sure if they want to, they can. But I'm just trying to say, I didn't realize that. So with that kind of puts it in back, that's how the money became, this transfer portal deal became an issue, in my opinion. Because you had the leagues, the pro leagues, basically requiring, in most sports, basketball was one of the rare ones that constantly would take kids straight out of high school. But almost, I mean, football is pretty much known for you're at least 3 years in college. Baseball is wild. I mean, the rules on those are interesting, like crazy. But they used to pull kids straight out of high school. It's not really done very much anymore. It still happens. But if you don't...
They have so many levels,
yeah,
too.
Well, not anymore. But now, I mean, you used to have to go 5 years. So, I mean, they had some pretty big... And then football, I mean, it's generally considered a pretty bad form to put an 18-year-old with, 25-year-old monsters out there. So you don't really see it. But again, those years are starting to come down. You've seen plenty more guys that come out in year 3 or year 2. So, I mean, it's creeping that way. What I'm trying to get at here, though, is that the money deal in this transfer portal really came about because these leagues had kind of these rules, unwritten or written or whatever, along with it, that made them stay into those areas. Then you had all the money coming in because all the school money, all the TV money, merchandise money, and all that kind of stuff was coming in specific for this men's basketball team or this women's team, which really helped them define how much money was going each one. Then that allowed you to be able to kind of factor back in, well, if we can get more players here, we'll get this much money, so I can give this much here. And then you had the coaches, then the coach salary started going crazy. And you started having teams like, what is it, in I think it's Nebraska or whatever, that has that really good volleyball team or something like that, that they have a huge following, make all kinds of money. And that one's a women's team. Of course, now we have certain basketball schools of women's that are doing very well. You have like OU softball that has been super dominant. I'm sure they get plenty of money, and then they're justifying paying their coach, paying their staff, probably NIL deals for the players and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, you can see how all this goes. But that's where it came down to that case in California where they were arguing that they're all making money off of the college kids that aren't making money and are risking their lives and their health and all that kind of stuff or whatever to make them that money. They should at least have the option, because of course they were getting in trouble for, getting a card deal because they signed an autograph, which is so dumb. But the problem you're into, as soon as you give a little bit, that line starts getting real fuzzy. So I understood why they did it. It still was what caused this issue. And then they ruled that they could, and now it's just been the Wild West. And nobody has any real idea what's going on, and everybody blames the NCAA. I have never been a fan of the NCAA, but in this case, I actually think they're probably doing about as good as they can. Because they keep trying to do stuff, and it keeps getting shot down in the courts. So you're like, what do you do? Now, there's plenty of people out there that don't think we're going to have the NCAA around much longer. What is it, the SEC, I think? Yeah, they're really positioning to kind of be like, we have our thing. You guys can do whatever you want. And that's what this looks like. That's what they're trying to do. Which if they do that, I mean, that's kind of like a different league then.
Yeah.
I mean, they can have all the rules they want. Now, I do find it interesting, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Do you have to go to class if you're going to transfer portal out? I don't know. Because would you ever be ineligible?
I mean, I would imagine your grades still matter for eligibility.
Yeah, but if you transfer out, I mean, you got to have some kind of an exemption. I mean,
but you transfer at the end of the semester.
I don't know. I don't know how that works.
I don't think you transfer in the middle.
I don't know. I mean,
that is a good question. But as far as I understand, for most of the players, it's like at the end of their season or semester, that's when they transfer to the next school. So I would imagine there would still be some grade eligibility in there somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and if you drop your classes in the middle of the semester, you would get, I forget what it's called. It's not a fail, but it would count as like not passing a class. So
does it on your eligibility?
If you're past a certain amount of weeks into the semester and you drop, yes.
I just don't know. I mean, again, that's part of that whole thing.
But no, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Not that, I mean, there are some athletes that pursue very difficult degrees while they're in school and do a lot of stuff, but then there's some athletes that go just for the sports and take a lot of classes that it doesn't really matter anyway. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely a different situation. Now, there's a lot of people that are just like, they don't understand the big deal, why the schools would spend so much, but it's been a long time since I've looked at it, but I remember that I think it was the average percentage increase of somebody that won the national football championship was like 8% the next year. That's
of students going into that school.
The 8% increase in applications for freshmen coming in next year. That is a huge increase.
Mm-hmm.
That's worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
And of course, and that's just talking about people that are going there for the school. That's not talking about how your program admissions go and there's sales at the beer at the
That's what I was going to say. Then you have all those kids wanting to attend said sporting events and are spending money at said sporting events, so you're making even more off of that student life on top of just admission.
Sure. Well, it's just funny though how much we determine where we're going to get our education for our job based on the sports that are being played by that school.
School culture. Gotta have fun while you're there.
I can't say anything. I mean, I went to a football school around here, I mean, because it's one of the popular ones. I didn't graduate there, but I went there first. But I mean, it's just funny how we have determined that if they have a good sports program, that means that's a good school to go get smart from. It doesn't seem like that equals anything.
What?
I don't know. It's kind of crazy. So I don't know. I see a lot of similarities, and of course, we are trying to develop a completely different program. I mean, we're just trying to get people to want to play for the love of playing.
Yeah.
Which is what we do. We try, and we still get into teams where we're like, I don't want to play you because it's not any fun.
Yeah. Hold up, though. Are you talking about youth level or adult level here?
Yes.
Because I feel that all the way around.
Yes. There's
those
plenty.
professional slow pitchers. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
We've
also gone against teams too that we weren't too happy about.
Oh man, a couple of them. People send me messages from the Facebook group. Hey, they're looking to do a scrimmage, and I'm like, no, thank you. Don't want to. Don't want to waste my time talking to that person.
Thank you for watching. Kate and Nevada hope you've enjoyed this show and found it useful and empowering. If you have any questions or comments, please contact them at kinetics.com. That's KNETICX.com. They're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. And please write a review of the show. Kate and Nevada appreciate hearing the feedback, and they welcome your reviews, and your word of mouth will help others learn how to feel better and be better.